Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at our inaugural OBLIQUITY Medical Humanities Collective. For those of you I haven't met before, my name's Manisha. I'm a first-year pediatric resident here at the U of A and the founder and creative director of OBLIQUITY. I'm here to kick things off and tell you a bit about OBLIQUITY. As our programming is happening simultaneously in Edmonton and London, you will participate in a mix of live and virtual sessions. We have done our best to keep these sessions balanced to optimize your overall experience, and it's been a pleasure to curate these sessions for you and to collaborate with exceptional artists, medical humanities experts, and fellow colleagues. I would like to start off by paying respect to the land upon we have the privilege to work, learn, and play. OBLIQUITY respectfully acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, and Inuit. Our programming is influenced by a need to address issues such as racism, intercultural competency, trauma-informed care, and human rights early in medical training. Our sessions and initiatives, such as our medical student planner, have been used as calls to action for self-directed learning and relearning. In alignment with the theme of our conference, the medical humanities across time, I want to take you through OBLIQUITY's history, presence, and future. I'm going to talk about this timeline using the medical narrative. Therefore, I've split the sections into HPI, History of Presenting Illness, Chief Complaint, and A/P, or Assessment and Plan. I will frame each section by referencing a piece of poetry or narrative that was influential to OBLIQUITY's growth at a particular moment in time. I will conclude by going through a brief overview of what to expect this weekend, and then we will transition to some networking activities we've prepared for you. Before I go on, I want to take a moment to introduce our OBLIQUITY team. OBLIQUITY has 2 chapters in Edmonton and in London. And this year we recruited a large team from Western University, London. You can see all of our team members there with you right now. So first, I would like to introduce Jacinta, who has been my right-hand woman in Edmonton. She's our community and media coordinator and is in the MD class of 2025 at the U of A. On our London team, we have Ashka. She's the president of the London team and is in the MD class of 2024. Ahmad is one of our conference co-leads and is in the MD class of 2026. You can look forward to a presentation by him tomorrow during the History of the Medical Humanities section of the conference. Ima is our other conference co-lead and is in the MD class of 2025. Amandi is our medical education and resource lead and is responsible for social media and advocacy. She is in the MD class of 2025. And last but not least, we have Udain, Leanne, and Agam, who are junior executives from the MD class of 2026. So, moving forward. In medicine, the HPI is perhaps one of the most important precursors to the identification of an abnormality or an illness, or lack thereof. Likewise, before OBLIQUITY was created, I had to reflect on what I wanted to address in medicine with the creation of this group. As a first-year medical student with a background in the humanities, I felt like the arts and sciences remained divided in my medical education. We would have communication sessions, patient immersion experiences, and lovely events hosted by our OM program. However, I found that there was a gap in integrating these teachings into our clinical practice. I was also very interested in the topics of burnout and resilience. I wondered how the medical humanities could protect healthcare professionals and others from burnout and promote wellness. I created this diagram to illustrate an ideal integration of the arts and sciences to create a product that is modern medicine. On the left and right sides, I have made a list of a few models or skills that I feel are vital ingredients to make a well-rounded physician. This diagram simplifies a very large conflict in medicine as it assumes integration. But in reality, this integration is one of the most complicated and nuanced parts of medicine. It's something that physicians, scholars, and experts in the medical humanities have been working towards since the 1960s, when the field of medical humanities emerged. We have yet to determine the exact recipe and framework that produces this ideal integrative medicine, but Obliquity has joined the ranks and is working towards this complex yet incredibly important task. As you may have seen from our website, Khalil Gibran is our poetic influence for this period. His poem on joy and sorrow remains one of my favorite poems of all time, and he does an incredible job of describing how two seemingly polar, in this case emotions, are actually inherently interconnected and dependent on each other. So I will now read you On Joy and Sorrow by Khalil Gibran. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? Is it not the lute that soothes your spirit, the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty, you are at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. The sentiments of this poem encapsulate how Obliquity feels about the arts and the sciences, and affirms our vision to dissolve the partition between the arts and the sciences while offering participants tools to cope with difficult situations they may endure. So how did we offer these tools in our early years? We started off with curating workshop sessions and designing a pre-clerkship elective for medical students. In our first year, our series was called Necessary Reflection and focused heavily on humanities-based topics. Sessions included reflection and resiliency, the power of poetry, narrative medicine, writing truthfully with Nisha Patel, and medical ethics and poetry. In our second year, we felt ready to begin integrating the arts and the sciences together. Hence, our series was called Intersections. This was driven by my transition from pre-clerkship to clerkship and desire to incorporate medical humanities principles into my clinical practice. In this year, our sessions included art for non-artists, poetry as vocation, avocation, and profession, Michiko's Mad Hatter Tea Party, ecologies and resonances of proximity, living in the space in between, and integrating the creative arts into palliative care. Year 3 was our solidifying year. We maintained our focus of integration, but we wanted to move towards the more tangible. We wanted to explore how individuals were breaking down systemic barriers and facilitating this union. Our sessions were primarily led by physicians and residents who reflected on their artistic practices as clinicians. Topics included drawing health, a search for meaning, poetry, art, and neurosurgery, process versus product, an exploration through comics, and art and dermatology. Our pre-clerkship elective was very experimental and primarily involved attending workshop sessions, completing reflections, and attending a year-end debrief session. The lessons I learned and the issues that were identified by the medical students' reflections and thoughts propelled Obliquity into a new direction that focused more on internal content creation and targeted undergraduate medical education as our first venue for en masse integration. When we write down a patient's chief complaint in a medical note, it's usually the shortest part of a note. It is exactly what the patient came in for today, usually using their own words. It can either be a symptom such as fever or vomiting, Or, and very often in psychiatry, it's the first statement the patient says when the physician asks, "What brings you in today?" As Obliquity shifted its targets to medical education, we began to think of some of the biggest issues that face learners and practicing physicians as they move through training. I've created a table of some of the most common symptoms and reflections that I heard or experienced during my training. So as you can see in this table, some of the most common symptoms from learners and practicing physicians alike include burnout, imposter syndrome, dissociation, and numbness. Common reflections are, I have no more energy, emotional, mental, or physical. I got lucky, I shouldn't be here. I feel like I'm living my life in third person, and I don't feel anything anymore, I'm fine. Although these are some of the most common chief complaints, what is still very common is this statement. Despite these complaints being historic and perpetuating, conversations about wellness, burnout, and imposter syndrome are just starting to take place. Therefore, actions and programs to implement change are just beginning to surface. It was at this point that I really reflected on Obliquity's intention to offer tools to cope and thought about ways that we could address this widespread concern, medicine's chief complaint. Which brings me to our narrative influence for this period, Dr. Viktor Frankl, who famously authored Man's Search for Meaning and defined despair as suffering without meaning. So with this equation in mind, I thought about how we could talk about the unspoken in a way that was accessible, safe, and free from judgment or shame. From this, our Medical Humanities Planner was born. Our planner features weekly agenda pages, 28 reflective prompts with topics ranging from representation in medicine, wellness challenges, writing activities, and exploring cultural competency, 28 artist spotlights, and a variety of references and resources. Our planner also includes artwork from local artists Kieran Rai, Stephanie Delmer, and Jacinta Speck. The planner was delivered to first-year medical students at the U of A, U of C, and Western University. I'm just going to go through some of the things that are included in the planner here. So each month would have a page like this where we would have an image from either a famous piece of artwork or that is somehow related, usually to the quote that we've chosen. So you can see that here that we have a quote by Pericles at the end. Medicine is not only a science, it is also an art. It does not consist of compounding pills and plasters. It deals with the very processes of life, which must be understood before they may be guided. Next, we have artist spotlights. So this is a spotlight that focused on representation in medicine and the first illustration of a Black fetus. These are some examples of reflective prompts that were included in the planner. So some talking about accessibility and ableism in medicine, some talking about historical conflicts. The third one here is talking about what coping strategies medical students already have and what they hope to gain through their training. And then finally, discussing a person that they look up to. You might notice the C on some of these reflective prompts, and that was our intention in terms of students that might be a little bit more cynical or haven't accepted the medical humanities quite yet. So the C stands for CARMS, as commonly asked CARMS interview questions, or questions that would help people prepare for their residency interviews. And we hope that that would grant us a bit more uptake with the medical students. These are some other, these ones are more specifically wellness challenges that we had, and also a prompt that allowed medical students to reflect on their definition of health. So that brings me to the final collation, our assessment and plan. Where do we go from here? You will hear the reflections of experts and scholars in the medical humanities this weekend who will offer you their studied perspectives. As a medical humanities enthusiast with no formal training, my answer is simple. We move forward. We keep breaking down barriers, dissecting systemic biases and historical medical cultures that don't serve the humanity of medicine or the humanity of our patients. This conference is one step in that direction. On a personal note, I will be completing a medical humanities elective that I designed alongside Dr. Pamela Brett McLean, entitled The Infrastructure of the Medical Humanities, the How-Tos and the What-Fors. The purpose of this elective is to gain a better understanding of the infrastructure of the medical humanities within medical education curriculum at different medical schools in Canada. Here, infrastructure refers to the organization of current medical humanities content and programming, the structure of said programming, and the resources available to these initiatives. Finally, we will see how the uptake of these programs unfolds as well as their overall success. I still have a lot to learn in this field, and I'm eager to explore it as a budding pediatrician and find new ways Obliquity can accommodate the needs of the healthcare workers and the community. On that note, I will share my final poetic influence, Sarah Kay and her spoken word, Point B.
If I should have a daughter, instead of mom, she's gonna call me Point B. Because that way she knows that no matter what happens, at least she can always find her way to me. And I'm gonna paint the solar systems on the backs of her hands. So she has to learn the entire universe before she can say, oh, I know that like the back of my hand. And she's gonna learn that this life will hit you hard in the face, wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach. But getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air. There is hurt here that cannot be fixed by band-aids or poetry. So the first time she realizes that Wonder Woman isn't coming, I'll make sure she knows she doesn't have to wear the cape all by herself. Because no matter how wide you stretch your fingers, your hands will always be too small to catch all the pain you want to heal. Believe me, I've tried. And baby, I'll tell her, don't keep your nose up in the air like that. I know that trick. I've done it a million times. You're just smelling for smoke, so you can follow the trail back to a burning house so you can find the boy who lost everything in the fire to see if you can save him. Or else find the boy who lit the fire in the first place to see if you can change him. But I know she will anyway, so instead, I'll always keep an extra supply of chocolate and rain boots nearby because there is no heartbreak that chocolate can't fix. Okay, there's a few heartbreaks that chocolate can't fix, but that's what the rain boots are for, because rain will wash away everything if you let it. I want her to look at the world through the underside of a glass-bottom boat, to look through a microscope at the galaxies that exist on the pinpoint of a human mind, because that's the way my mom taught me, that there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this, my mama said. When you open your hands to catch, I'll wind up with only blisters and bruises. When you step out of the phone booth and try to fly, and the very people you want to save are the ones standing on your cape. When your boots will fill with rain and you'll be up to your knees in disappointment, and those are the very days you have all the more reason to say thank you, because there's nothing more beautiful than the way the ocean refuses to stop kissing the shoreline, no matter how many times it's sent away. You will put the wind in winsome, lose some. You will put the star in starting over and over. And no matter how many landmines erupt in a minute, be sure your mind lands on the beauty of this funny place called life. And yes, on a scale from 1 to over-trusting, I am pretty damn naive, but I want her to know that this world is made out of sugar. It can crumble so easily, but don't be afraid to stick your tongue out and taste it. Baby, I'll tell her, remember your mama is a worrier and your papa is a warrior, and you are the girl with small hands and big eyes who never stops asking for more. Remember that good things come in threes, and so do bad things, and always apologize when you've done something wrong, but don't you ever apologize for the way your eyes refuse to stop shining. Your voice is small, but don't ever stop singing. And when they finally hand you heartache, when they slip war and hatred under your door and offer you handouts on street corners of cynicism and defeat, you tell them that they really ought to meet your mother.
So I chose this piece for the future of Obliquity as it captures beautiful dichotomies and the ever-present ups and downs of life. As a now first-year resident who has just finished an exceptionally busy pediatric surgery rotation, followed by 2 weeks of nights, the highs and lows are something I connect with very deeply right now. And despite being exceptionally sleep-deprived and devoid of several functioning neurons, I can say with great certainty that it's been an absolute pleasure to organize this conference for you. The humanities have always found a way to ground me and balance me when life gets chaotic. And so, without further ado, I will give you a preview of what you can expect for the rest of OBLIQUITY's first Medical Humanities Collective. Over the next few days, you will hear the thoughts and reflections of leaders and scholars in the medical humanities. You will also see performances from local artists and poets. Finally, you will walk through a specially curated gallery of artwork and written reflections that express views on the presence of the medical humanities. Tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, you will hear first from Dr. Brett McLean and Dr. Jacques Murray. In their presentation, they hope participants will develop an appreciation for the unique historical evolution of the medical/health humanities in Canada in relation to its development elsewhere in the West, namely the US and the UK. And secondly, to consider the role of different factors that have influenced the growth of the medical humanities over time. Next, you will hear from Shane Nielsen, who will contrast Indigenous story medicine with narrative medicine at an epistemological level. We will finish off the history section of the conference with Ahmad's presentation, Historical Catalysts for the Growth of the Medical Humanities. On Saturday afternoon, starting at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, we will begin the present section of the conference. We will start off with 4 performances and then proceed to our specially curated walking gallery. The performances will include Katie Van Kampen, Majeen Mathurin, Dr. Wendy Stewart, and Nisha Patel. On Sunday, beginning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, you will hear from our keynote speaker, Mariam Golfashani, who will talk about the medical humanities in the age of medicine's technological reproducibility. This session will be followed by a conversation on the future of the medical humanities, from scholarship to public engagement with special guest Amala Pali. Next, Dr. Michael Van Manen will explore the meaning of ethics for medical technologies and provide examples of empirical medical humanities research that supports reflection on the future of ethics and technologies. Finally, Dr. Brendan Lear will chat about why he is hopeful about the medical humanities and his experiences being a clinical ethicist. And on that note, I will conclude, and I will open up for any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see the London team, and then we'll move into some networking activities.